face with one best friend. It was easy going rogue. Life was anything but fair, but somehow we didn't care. Way back then, we saw all the movies on a big screen when we couldn't afford to pay the price.
Hello there! We're back in Tokyo for the summer, so we just took a taxi from Haneda Airport going to our hotel, but it's still too early to check in. So we'll leave our luggages first, head out to explore, and then come back later during check-in time. Our hotel is Mitsui Garden Hotel Jingu Gaien, tucked in a quiet area but still very close to Shibuya and Shinjuku. And right across from us, you can see the National Stadium. So it's our first day in Tokyo and we decided to head to the Aoyama area. It's very close, just one stop from our station. Time check at 7:30 in the morning. Let's find a cafe first, have some breakfast, and of course, coffee.
We're here at Cafe Do to try their famous fluffy French toast. golden brown, pan-seared, soft. Crispy on the outside and soft and warm on the inside. Even though pudding knows it's summer in Japan, it's melting fast. Tastes like leche flan. Better than leche flan.
still pretty full from what we ate at the cafe, and we're about to have lunch in a bit. So we just had our orders packed for takeaway to eat later in the hotel room. We passed by I'm Donut and were pleasantly surprised to see a very short line, so we decided to take the chance. On our many visits to Tokyo, we've always wanted to try this famous donut shop, but the line usually stretches down the street. Looks like today is finally the day. Let's go grab some donuts. It's soft, light, and moist with a chewy mochi-like bite. It's not very sweet and has a unique silky texture and flavor. The soft, airy dough opens up to a smooth, creamy custard that melts almost instantly on your tongue.
here's a quick room tour. So that's the bath area. A separate toilet area. The sink, mirror, and some shelves. There's even a small sitting area. Twin beds. This room is actually a lot more spacious than our last hotel room in Akihabara, and that had twin beds as well. Now let's see the view. The National Stadium. Let's see what's inside. Coffee and tea, water heater, glasses and cups. Inside are wine glasses, some plates, and utensils. And here's a small refrigerator with complimentary water. Big TV to watch the vlogs. Good sized closet. Because of our late flight, we're going to take some time to rest. So we'll freshen up, get some sleep, and then go out for dinner later.